Alright, so I got an update here for you guys on George Santos, who, as I covered about a week ago on this channel, has basically been exposed as one of the most prolific pathological liars in the history of the United States, which is obviously saying a lot. So this guy was just recently elected to Congress, right? And he just took a seat a couple of weeks ago. And in the meantime, we have gotten just a whole litany of different lies that this guy has told over the years, and even some that were very recent as well. But I'm going to give you just a little bit of a recap here in terms of all of the lies that we know about so far, some of which I've already talked about, but we also have some new ones in here as well. And then I'm going to show you guys this little interview clip from when he did a podcast with Matt Gaetz for some reason, and he asked some questions about George Santos's finances and potentially the funding for his campaign as well, which could also open him up to, actual criminal consequences for some of the stuff that he has been engaging in throughout his career. So here from the Intelligencer, New York Mag, they say, here's every lie told by George Santos so far, okay, because again, this list could easily continue expanding, but so they say that he lied about where he went to high school and college for good measure there. He said he went to like Baruch College. He also apparently told people that he was like a college volleyball champion or something. Turns out he didn't even play volleyball, let alone win a championship, let alone even go to the school that he was talking about. He also lied about going to NYU and apparently his high school as well. They say he never worked on Wall Street either, so he also lied about working for Goldman Sachs and Citigroup for some reason, because again, like, that's not even a type of lie that would potentially help you with your campaign, because believe it or not, people aren't really big fans of like Goldman Sachs corrupt Wall Street ghouls, but he decided to lie about it anyway. And they continue with some questions here again about where his money potentially could have come from, and I'm going to show you guys a little bit of an update there on that in a second here, but we're going to continue with the actual lies. Okay, so they continue with the list here, saying he also lied about founding an animal charity. I mean, what do you even say about this guy? They also ask, what's the deal with his marriages? Because as I talked about a couple of weeks ago, this guy was basically coming out and telling people that he was like an open and proud gay man. Obviously, nothing at all wrong with that. But there were questions because he said like, oh, I've been out and open and proud of this for a long time now. And it turns out that he was actually part of a marriage with a woman literally like 2 weeks before he launched his campaign. Okay, he was married to a woman and got a divorce just weeks before officially launching his campaign. So it's like, maybe that was a marriage and he is an actual gay man. That happens all the time. It wouldn't be, the craziest thing in the world, but there's even questions about potentially his sexuality, or at least how he has portrayed it. But they continue, and this one's just amazing, because again, it's like, why even lie about something like this? But they say it's unclear if his mother's death was related to 9/11. Okay, so he basically was going around and saying like, oh, my mom died in 9/11, right? Suggesting, or at least giving the implication or the impression that his mom was like dying in the towers when the planes hit the buildings, right? And turns out she died like years and years and years later. Maybe you could make an argument, I guess, if she happened to be in the right place, that, she could have been one of the people who was unfortunate enough to get some longer term, cancer or illness from being exposed to some of the toxins in the air. Maybe, but as far as we know right now, we can't even confirm that at all either. So potentially lied about the way that his mom died, which is just so beyond fucked up. But they continue saying that his grandmother was definitely not a Holocaust victim. Okay, and this wasn't the only sort of like fib he told about his ethnicity and his Jewish heritage here, but he lied about his grandma being a Holocaust victim. Okay, again, why do this to yourself? I mean, as if people can't like fact check these types of things, right? And this is probably the single most fucked up one. He did not have employees who died in the Pulse shooting. So again, he like for some reason decided to come out and just make up the fact that he lost 4 employees during the Pulse nightclub shooting back in 2016. And there's apparently no connection. So it's like, what are you even talking about here? Again, these are like easily verifiable lies. It's not even like, oh, I'm stretching the truth or like, bending it a little bit. It's like, like, these are things that anybody could verify easily. And this guy ran for Congress, and not only did he run for Congress, but somehow, like, the Democratic Party in New York, which is completely dysfunctional and terrible for many different reasons, but somehow nobody managed to expose this stuff, or at least focus the campaign against him on one of these lies, one of the 500 lies that we've gotten so far. I mean, it's just like embarrassing. This was a swing district. This was a district that Democrats could have won. And as a reminder, New York was one of the biggest states in terms of Democrat underperformance in the midterms. That state single-handedly could have decided who ended up winning the House of Representatives. And if Democrats didn't completely shit the bed in the state of New York, they could potentially still be holding on to the House of Representatives. And it's just, a perfect example in terms of the incompetence at the highest levels within the Democratic Party, that all of this would be, under the table, and they didn't even attempt to look for it, apparently, or at least, again, didn't make it a central portion of their campaigns. But they continue saying that, again, the second lie about his potential Jewish heritage is that he basically came out, and after saying, like, a multitude of different times that, oh, I am actually Jewish, right, implying that, like, you are a Jewish person, right? But then he basically came out and said, no, I didn't mean that I was Jewish, I meant that I was Jewish, which I guess means, like, kind of Jewish or similar to the Jewish people, or having some sort of an overlap. I don't even know what the fuck he actually meant by that, but again, this is just his sort of like pathetic way of continuing to lie about these things. Now, the cherry on top of all of these different lies, right, is that potentially he may be lying about his name, which is like something that a lot of people on the left were joking about when all of these lies started coming out. He might have literally lied about what his name is, or at least he's been using multiple different names for himself, because as pointed out here by Patriot Takes, they say in 2019, so just a couple years ago, George Santos introduced himself as Anthony DeVolder, which is like a family name, DeVolder, that also is going to tie into some of his financial, misdeeds. But they say the founder of United for Trump during a Q&A session at a Walk Away LGBT event in New York City, and Santos said that trans people could benefit from a trans conservative activist educating them. Okay, whatever the fuck that means. But again, introducing himself as Anthony DeVolder, and this isn't the only time that I've seen this name, Anthony DeVolder, come up surrounding this guy. So lied about being Jewish, lied about his grandma being a Holocaust victim, potentially lied about his own sexuality, potentially lied about his mom dying as a result of 9/11, and even on top of that, potentially lying about what name he is identifying with. But again, this is just tacking up on a billion other things that this guy is in trouble for right now, and we're gonna get into some of his finances here with this amazing, journalistic integrity here by Matt Gaetz being the interviewer in this situation, and basically just lets George Santos slide with one of the slimiest answers you could possibly ask for. So let's just go ahead and watch this short little clip here.
One of the principal critiques I've heard is that a lot of money was donated to your campaign by you, $700,000, I believe. Where did it come from?
Well, I'll tell you where it didn't come from. It didn't come from China, Ukraine, or Burisma. How about that?
Well, yeah, that is an answer.
Is it? I mean, is that an answer to the question? I mean, he literally just completely deflected. All he said was, well, did you know something, Joe Biden is corrupt and whatever? And it's like, yeah, okay, sure. You could make an argument that pretty much every single U.S. politician elected to office right now, I could probably count on my hands the ones that this wouldn't apply to. Yeah, they're all corrupt, obviously. They all take bribes from corporate America, the military-industrial complex, the billionaire class, etc. That's all just like sort of normal baked-in corruption. But this is not even what we're talking about here. We're not just talking about like corporate donations to somebody's campaign, or like potential even higher levels of corruption that he's accusing Joe Biden of there. We're talking about, how did you finance your own campaign, right? Where did this money come from? The $700,000 or so that were dumped into his campaign that somehow like magically appeared out of nowhere. So I want to give you just a little bit more actual information on this, because we didn't get an actual answer out of this podcast here from Matt Gaetz, because he basically just allowed him to slide away with that. But here from the Washington Post first, they say George Santos was paid for work at a company accused of Ponzi scheme later than previously known. Okay, so what are they talking about here? Because of course this guy would be involved in a Ponzi scheme. If there was ever a more Ponzi scheme motherfucker in the world, I wouldn't know them. Okay, so they say Representative George Santos, who has admitted to fabricating key details of his biography, that's the understatement of the century, but he received payments as recently as April of 2021 from a financial services company accused by the Securities and Exchange Commission of a classic Ponzi scheme, according to a court-appointed lawyer reviewing the firm's assets. Santos did not divulge any income from the company, Florida-based Harbor City Capital, on a financial disclosure form required of all federal candidates. The payments the lawyer described to the Washington Post, which have not been previously reported, indicate that Santos received money at least a month after he said he left the firm and mere weeks before registering a business called the DeVolder Organization, okay, there's that name again, that he has claimed as a basis for his wealth. Okay, so you guys following along with this, right? Okay, they're saying that this guy was involved in a Ponzi scheme. Okay, he gets some sort of a payout from this organization or entity that he was involved with scamming people in, and he gets some sort of a payout, and then a couple weeks later, he has this new firm called the DeVolder Organization that he then is claiming for the basis of his wealth. What? Come on, man. I mean, come on. You know, I obviously can't make any 100% judgments in terms of whether or not he's, like, guilty of some financial crimes here, but, I mean, it's not looking good for you, man. They continue, saying that the lawyer, Catherine C. Donlon, declined to tell the Post the amount that Santos was paid, and they say the congressman's deceptions have already sparked an investigation by the district attorney's office in Nassau County. I'm sure I'm butchering the pronunciation of that, but they say as well as complaints before the Federal Election Committee. So that's two different pieces of, or two different angles that he could be getting taken down on. But there's a third one here. They say authorities in Brazil are also seeking to revive a fraud case against Santos dating to 2008. Okay, so apparently long track record of crime here from our boy George Santos. But okay, so you have investigations in Brazil, you have investigations in Nassau County, and you have potential investigations, or at least like complaints that are being filed at the FEC. So it's, kind of heating up here a little bit. At least hopefully there would be, some semblance of accountability for this guy. I mean, if there's any politician, I mean, obviously we know that politicians typically get away with all of their various crimes, but I mean, this is just like at a whole different level. And the thing that, gives me some sort of an indication in terms of why he may actually be held accountable is because he didn't just screw over like his constituents. He didn't just screw over, poor people or average working class people. He also screwed over potentially, some wealthy donors. He screwed over the elites within the Republican Party and all of that. So, that would be an indication in terms of they might throw this guy under the bus. But I'm going to show you some testimony here from some key Republican figures in the House of Representatives who are, standing by him as of right now. So they finish off here in the Washington Post article saying, during his first run for Congress in 2020, Santos reported earning a salary of $55,000 from a previous employer in the financial industry. His fortunes then improved dramatically, according to the financial disclosure he filed during his 2022 campaign. So just 2 years later, he earned an annual salary of $750,000. So going from $55,000 to $750,000 must just have like an absolute Sigma grind set going on here. But he also received more than $1 million in dividends from the DeVolder Organization. He also lent his campaign more than $700,000 according to campaign finance records. So again, I can't make any 100% judgments on, whether or not this guy is going to be prosecuted for this, but again, it doesn't look too good, right? I mean, you have all of this money, hundreds of thousands, maybe even close to a couple $1 million here that are appearing out of thin air, one of which, this $1 million in dividends, is coming from the DeVolder Organization, which was apparently set up like just in the aftermath of you getting paid out at this gigantic classic Ponzi scheme, in the words of the SEC. I mean, it's like, it seems like there almost has to be something that you could actually, apply some criminal consequences to this guy with. But even with all of that, okay, the lying about the name, the lying about the Jewish heritage, the lying about the grandmother dying in the Holocaust, lying about his mom in 9/11, lying about all of these different various things, here's the Republican Party for you, right? So from CNN, they say McCarthy stands by Santos despite growing calls for resignation from other GOP lawmakers. So there is kind of a split here. You have some lawmakers, but they're really more at like the county or the state level that are calling on this guy to resign. For the most part, from what I've seen, those at the federal level in Congress are definitely not showing any indication that they're willing to throw this guy under the bus yet. But they say here that Representative George Santos, the recently elected GOP congressman from New York who has admitted to lying about parts of his resume, pretty much the entirety of it, is facing escalating backlash from his own party as a growing number of House Republican lawmakers call for him to resign or say that he can't serve effectively, even as Speaker Kevin McCarthy has stood by the embattled congressman. And keep in mind here, Kevin McCarthy definitely made some sort of under-the-table deal with George Santos when there was that whole speaker standoff battle going on in the House of Representatives. He definitely made some sort of like a backroom deal with him to some extent at least protect George Santos in exchange for his support during that fight. So keep that in mind as we continue here. They say Santos has so far been defiant, pushing back on calls for his resignation, and the House GOP leadership has not called on him to do so. I mean, think about that for just a second. I mean, the Republican Party, I mean, obviously, there are plenty of Democrats that are liars or anything. I'm not trying to make this into like it's only Republicans who are bad and who lie about things or whatever. Joe Biden, in fact, lied about many different parts of his resume, as I covered on this channel back during the 2020 primary. But, I mean, point is, you're looking at a GOP that is basically taking a situation where one of their candidates has verifiably lied about like a billion different things, and not even just small white lies here and there, but like he has proven himself to be a pathological liar. Okay, he has taken it to the fullest extent possible. He potentially, is not only lying to his constituents, but potentially committing financial crimes as well, or campaign finance violations as well. And you're still standing by him. I mean, like, what does it actually take? I mean, how is this in your best interest as a party to just completely normalize this type of wildly egregious behavior within your caucus? I mean, it's not surprising, but it's also just like, damn, like this is really where we're at right now. But they continue, saying that McCarthy told reporters on Thursday that Santos, quote, has a long way to go to earn trust. I mean, really, is it even possible at this point? I doubt it. But they say that there's also concerns these concerns could be investigated by the House Ethics Committee, but emphasize that Santos is a part of the House GOP conference, saying the voters of his district have elected him. Did they really elect him, though? If you lied about everything, if you lied about your entire resume, then can you really say that, oh, well, they chose him, they elected him? Well, no, they elected a guy who they thought was a real person, and then it turns out that none of him was actually how he presented himself. So did they really elect George Santos, or did they elect some guy who was just like a mythical figure who this guy just completely made up out of whole cloth? But he continues saying he is seated. He is part of the Republican conference, he said at a news conference on Capitol Hill. And we also got a statement here from Majority Leader Steve Scalise, a Louisiana Republican, who echoed McCarthy, saying, obviously, we're finding out more, but we also recognize that he was elected by his constituents. Okay, so saying the exact same fucking thing. House GOP Conference Chair Elise Stefanik, a New York Republican who endorsed Santos in his race, would not call on the embattled freshman to resign on Thursday, saying it will play itself out. What does that mean? I mean, does he literally have to be like walked out in handcuffs before you're going to jump ship on this? She continues saying he's a duly elected member of Congress, but not really, though. Not really. There have been members of the... Okay, again, with just the complete deflection here. There have been members of Congress on the Democrat side who have faced investigations before. I mean, what does that mean? I mean, again, it's not even just about the potential like criminal or ethics investigations. It's also just about the fact that we know that he's lied about all of these different things. I mean, that's not enough for it. You have to just deflect and say, well, remember when Democrats were under investigation for X, Y, and Z? I mean, how does that prove your point? And by the way, every time that there is some sort of an investigation into a high-level politician, I mean, especially like Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden, Republicans are always jumping at the bit or chomping at the bit in order to be the first ones in line to go out and say that they should be kicked out of government, that they should be arrested, that they should be thrown in jail. I mean, they're always jumping at those opportunities in order to try to throw Democrats under that. But then when it comes to somebody on their own side, it's just a completely different situation apparently. But they finish off here saying that Santos, of course, refused to address any of the allegations of lying about his resume or his colleagues' calls for his immediate resignation on Thursday morning, saying, "I was elected by the people," before ducking into his office. And they finish off here again with some calling on him to actually resign, saying that the leaders of the Nassau County Republican Party on Wednesday called for Santos to resign from office over his lies to voters and fabrications about his personal life. Santos, however, swiftly rejected the calls to resign. So, I mean, there you have it. This is, a little update on the current status of the Republican Party and their caucus in the House of Representatives, and a little bit of an update there on George Santos. I'm sure that there are going to be like dozens of more lies. The longer that this guy stays in Congress, the more that this, line curve of lies is going to grow exponentially. So I'll keep you guys updated if we get any more. But this is just honestly like just a completely pathetic situation. I mean, it's on the one hand kind of funny that he chose to lie about all of these things that, number one, you didn't need to lie about in any way, shape, or form, and number two, are easily verifiable lies that anybody could have done research into to figure out that you were lying about these things and to fact check you on this. But he's apparently standing strong, and it looks like Republicans, for the most part so far, might change in the future depending on the outcome of some of those criminal investigations, but it looks like Republicans are going to try to stand by this guy till the very end.
Everyone is saying good Politic guy has the best Politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying